Stick it in your fucking face! Stick it in your face! Now!
What's up, everyone? Today we're going to dive headfirst into a piece of metal history, the Making of Lamb of God's Sacrament. And I've actually never seen this before, because by the time it came out, I was already well into my career and wasn't really interested in seeing band documentaries. However, I have heard from so many people that this inspired them to be a musician or to become a producer. I want to see what the hype was all about. You got to remember that this came out in an era where there was basically no information about how to make metal records. So this is all that people had. And this was the difference between them getting started or not doing it at all. I've heard about some of it. There's some really famous stories, like Machine making Randy Blythe run around the block twice in order to get a vocal take. And I also know that Machine was using some really clever tracking techniques, like, for instance, recording hands and feet separately on drums. So this is a real-time reaction to see if there's anything in this old documentary that's still relevant and useful to a modern producer, or is it just a nostalgia trip? Let's get into it. Interesting note about Lamb of God. When they came out on the scene, I remember people who I knew that were like street team kind of people telling me that the major labels had decided that this was going to be like the next Pantera or the next Slayer. And, you know, Lamb of God were signed to a major label pretty early on. They went from Prosthetic Records to Sony, I believe. They were pushed like the next big band. Rightly so. I mean, I don't think that you can buy that. You can invest in a band, but you're making a gamble. There's plenty of artists. We all know of bands who have gotten a huge label backing and then just flop. But then every once in a while, you find a band where the stars all aligned and basically they bet on the right horse. And I would say that the right horse was Lamb of God.
All right, so now we have to headline this festival. Are we the ones that can do this? Can we do this?
Yes, the Lamb of God Wall of Death. That was quite a legendary thing. This came out in 2006. We did Ozfest. My band did Ozfest with them in 2007, and they were direct support for Ozzy. I mean, it's a really big band, and they've been a big band for a while.
All right, we can do this, you know, and our confidence just rose and rose and rose throughout the summer. But it was a matter of becoming a little cocky, or else it's not going to translate.
What he's saying right there about their confidence growing and growing and growing, this is why a local band, in my opinion, will never measure up to a national band, even if the national band is less talented than the local band. And it's just because the national band has played more. So they've experienced failure more times. They've played in front of hostile audiences more times, and they've won over audiences more times. And so they've learned how to play live, and they've developed that confidence that it takes to actually win over a crowd. And that's not something that you can engineer. The only way to do that is to actually play live a lot and learn how to put on a good show. This tightness that you hear right here, it's not some super technical stuff, but this level of tightness that you're hearing, that's the tightness of a band that knows their shit and has played together a lot. It's really, really hard to simulate that.
I feel like it was lucky for us to be in those arenas. It was lucky that we've taken it this far, and every day that we spend not pushing this or trying to tackle another hurdle is a day wasted.
I love that attitude that Chris Adler has right there of considering himself lucky that everything worked out. If you take this shit for granted, that's an easy way to let it go. And I know that when my band was fortunate enough to tour with some bigger bands, like actually I'm thinking back to Ozfest in particular, or times that we've shared a bus with bands that are far bigger than us. I remember sitting around and thinking, these dudes think that this is going to last forever. Oftentimes there'd be like one person or two people who were thinking forward and who were, you know, always on top of the ball and always thinking about the next thing and not taking it for granted. But the majority of people just felt like this was going to be their lot in life forever. Things were always going to be awesome. That's a very dangerous attitude because a band is a very, very fragile thing. It can be gone the next day. Like you can find out that your vocalist committed a crime, a really, really bad crime, and then suddenly your band's over. Like anything could happen in a band, and you're never assured success. I mean, the audience could just get over you also. So Chris's attitude here of consider yourself lucky that we got this far. Let's get right back to work and like crush the next album. I love that attitude, and it shows. Like I was saying in my Metallica reaction, that success leaves clues, and there's a reason for why the Black Album ended up as great as it did. It was the decisions that they made. And Lamb of God's success is also, it's not some accident. It's attitudes like these of never taking anything for granted that allowed them to keep on getting better and keep on going and keep on pushing.
It's tough to say because we're playing it every day, you know, and it's just tough to think, like, are we stuck in the fishbowl and not really hearing it for what it is because we're playing it as we're listening to it, or I just want to make sure it's awesome.
That right there is one of the hardest things about being a mixer or a writer or musician or any type of creative person, is that you actually don't know if you're any good. You can hope that you're good, and I know that oftentimes when we'll write something, we'll mix something, we'll get that dopamine rush and get like high off of our own mix or our own song, and then come back the next day and think it sucks and kind of just go down this spiral, this rabbit hole. And that's actually a reason for why it's good to have a producer come in and give you an outside perspective on things, because it's like song dysmorphia or something. It's hard to actually hear your songs for what they are.
Randy's always been late to the process, and I think purposefully to some extent. I think his forte is being a live rock and roll singer.
For me to be there, it's pretty useless.
He's not much for sitting around the practice space, nor are we much for having him sit around the practice space.
That makes a lot of sense. I think for a lot of bands that have screaming vocals, Lamb of God's not death metal, but close enough in the vocal style, just raspy, screaming vocals. Kind of technical, maybe not technical by today's standards, but definitely technical enough to where you have to sit there and figure these songs out note by note. You can't really jam songs like Lamb of God songs. And so a vocalist that's going to come up with patterns that are very rhythmic, just having them hang around a writing session, like Randy himself said, it's kind of useless. It's, in my experience, a lot better to give them a song to work with. And then obviously you can meld the song around what they're feeling vocally. Like if a part needs to go longer, needs to go shorter, but you got to give them something to work with. And it's really, really hard to tweak a riff around some sort of a grunting pattern or whatever.
They bounce stuff off each other constantly, and they can play 30 times, and they'll be like, wait, we want to change it to, and that will go on for literally 8 to 10 hours a day.
Randy talking about what level of detail they go into on their songs. Yeah, 8 to 10 hours a day. And so you wonder, why is a band where they are, or why are their songs so good, or why are my songs not as good as theirs, or like, what's the secret here? And Randy just told you the secret. The secret is you sit there and you work on it, and you keep working on it, and you tweak it and you work on it until it is what you want it to be. And a lot of it is just mechanical grunt work and shit work, and it's not sexy. It's not all just like this inspired thing where the light bulb goes on and a song pops out in like 2 hours and it's some hit. Like lots of these songs are basically chiseled out of stone. You just work at it and work at it and work at it and work at it. It's hours spent that oftentimes will make the difference. Hours spent properly, that is. Sick band, right? Very sick.
It started with me coming in with ideas and them sort of taking those ideas and morphing them into something that wasn't what I initially intended. You know, I brought that song Nouveau, and it's called Descending now on the album.
Mark would say, here's my song. You know, I'm looking at Willie, Willie's looking at me like, you know, what is that? Is that metal?
Chris immediately hated it. I immediately loved it because it's something a little different.
So when you have a band that is used to working a certain way, as in writing songs together, and then you have a member who then starts writing songs by himself and then just kind of giving people their parts, that can lead to tension between band members. It's important to work this stuff out, but actually this is a reason for why a lot of bands break up. So kudos to Lamb of God for having worked this stuff out. Now, I don't know if this is the famous DVD where they get into the fist fight or it's some other DVD because I've never seen this before. But if you know anything about Lamb of God, you know that they have had very rocky relationships. You know, lots of interpersonal shit culminating in a fight on camera. It's stuff like this where if you don't communicate properly and then another thing happens that festers and then fights happen or bands break up. But I think that it's important for bands to be open to wherever the best song is coming from, because oftentimes you will have somebody who just gets an inspiration and writes a great song, and there's no reason to shoot them down just because you're used to doing things a different way.
Usually songs take a little while for me to get used to them, to listen to them, but first initial take, it's kind of like, yeah.
That one's got a lot of room for vocals.
You guys hate it?
When you're presenting a song to a band, it's an interesting thing because they could have reactions like Chris and Willie, where one of them hates it and the other person is like, whatever. And I've heard people in bands say that, you know, when they go to write, they will present the band with lots of different songs, lots of options. And if everyone's not just stoked initially, then they'll just drop that and then only go with the ones that people are super stoked on. And I think that that's a good approach. And also, if you're the person presenting that, it's good to put your ego aside and know that it's not personal. If someone in your band just isn't into a song, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. However, if you feel really, really strongly about it and feel like they just don't get it in the state that the song is in right now, they don't have the vision for it that you have, it's also on you to fight for it or to develop it further so that it can be in a state where you can convince them. So, you know, there's a fine line between knowing when to ditch an idea or see an idea through. The part we've been waiting for. I gotta say, I love Machine, the producer. We've had him on Nail the Mix several times. We had him speak at the URM Summit. The man is a genius and is basically this electric human being. He's got so much knowledge of just audio and how to explain ideas to people. Just for the record, Will Putney and Josh Wilbur and Zach Cervini all came up under Machine. So what I'm saying is accurate. He's a really, really great source of knowledge. And it's going to be interesting to see him back in the day, because I know him something like 15 years later doing Nail the Mix. I'm very curious to see what he was like back in like 2005.
Almost right away, as we were writing the first couple songs, we started talking about who was going to produce the record. And we had had great results on a production level with Machine on the last record. We found out that Machine didn't really want to do it, mostly due to us not allowing him in very much on Ashes of the Wake. You know, we basically put him into the job of turn the knobs, make us sound good. This is how we sound. Don't fuck with it.
I left that last record saying to myself, that was a cool experience. I learned a lot. In my mind, I was just sure that was going to be the last thing. And as good it wasn't. Here we are for our second round together. I really feel like I'm my normal self on this record, and the band have really adopted me in. That makes me feel great.
You have to know who you're hiring. So there's different types of producers and there's different types of production jobs in metal. So, you know, you have some bands who basically come in with a finished product and just need you to make it sound great and then hit record and let you know when you fucked up, and that's it. There's other bands who want you to help basically take the songs to the next level. And then there's bands who want you to basically write for them. So I think there's that middle category of the producer is like an extra band member who is there giving their ideas and capturing everything and helping level up the songs, where I think that's the best place for Machine. Like Chris Adler just said, Machine didn't want to do the record unless he was able to do what he's best at, which makes a lot of sense, because if you're an idea person and you're just sitting there hitting record and turning knobs, there's a lot of work that goes into these records. It could be a very, very frustrating experience.
He definitely has an outsider's view to metal, so some of his ideas and some of his direction is very non-metal. It's definitely sometimes trying to go through the paces of some of his ideas, knowing that it feels awkward.
This is one of those rare cases where a non-metal person actually does a great job producing metal, and that's because so much metal production involves breaking rules that you wouldn't break in other genres. Metal is basically the crafting of a lot of noise, and people who just aren't in the culture and don't love it tend to make really, really strange production decisions. Machine is one of those exceptions. He was totally not a metal guy. He did a lot of like electronic records, rock records, radio kind of stuff. So Lamb of God was very much outside his wheelhouse, and so that definitely caused a little bit of creative tension with the Lamb of God guys, but ultimately, the result speaks for itself.
He's the first guy that ever really produced vocals for me, and I learned a lot from him.
He's shooting for the stars. That's his job.
I have the feeling that this whole song has been rushed.
It's too fast.
But the whole thing. You probably rehearse it fast and all, but I'm just saying, think about resetting your brain for a second, just hearing this whole thing slower.
Finding the right tempo for a song is one of the most important things you can do for a song, and that's actually a producer, that's one of the things that they should be really, really great at. And oftentimes it's not just finding the tempo for the song. It could be tempo for the section of the song or tempo for a part of a riff. Like, it can get really, really, really granular. But at a macro level, just finding the right tempo for a song is everything. It could be something like the song feels like it's dragging, and just bumping it 5 BPM could be what makes the difference between it feeling great and it just being kind of boring. Or in this case, he thinks that it feels rushed because they're probably practicing at home without a click, like playing it super fast and like getting faster and faster and faster. And he's trying to get a better feel out of them. And let's see if they're receptive.
How far down would you want to bring it, Mark and Machine?
Like starting by the whole song, dropping 5?
Dropping 5, exactly what I said. That's a good increment when you're not quite sure, unless it's like something where you're positive, like this needs to be way slower. If it's just, this feels rushed, or this feels like it's dragging just a little, 5 BPM is a great increment to try and kind of go from there.
Like a noticeable, we slowed this song down tempo?
Let's do it and drag it.
Sometimes he'll even argue Chris Adler down, which is a hard fucking thing to do, man. Good dude.
So everybody choke in one guitar slide, or everybody slide?
Guitar slide.
Right.
Yeah, big slide
I don't
event.
want to miss out on this slide.
Those little details, that's the kind of stuff that a producer brings to the table. That coordinated slide at that spot, very sick idea. Setting aside a good amount of time for pre-pro, that's where you can add ideas like that. Say you didn't come in with them. And those are the little things, like the ear candy or just the little details that make a song have replay value.
I had some really hard issues writing. I write a lot, which was another part of this record that almost killed me, because I was having writer's block. Thank God for Mark Morton and everybody else in the band helping me out.
It really did get down to the last fucking minute.
I know that it's scary in the moment, but I cannot tell you how many records I've worked on where the vocals are not written until the last minute. It just feels like every single record. The music's ready and they've had all this time, but they're just not ready. Vocalists are they're a special breed. You kind of need them, but you also need to know how to put up with them.
More with more drama and angst, just crossfitting over it, you're exactly the same again and longer. As messed up as he is, he doesn't mind working with you and trying ideas. He's actually quite easy to work with, even though he's a maniac.
You're exactly the same! What Machine just said is crucial. He's actually very easy to work with, even though he's a maniac. That's kind of a really key detail about lots of these bands that are huge. They have personas of being rough and tough, and you see videos of them getting into fist fights, and there's all these legends about them. But at the end of the day, in order to get to where they're at and to maintain a career, they have to be able to work with other people. This doesn't work if you're such a crazy motherfucker that nothing can get done. You have to be able to take feedback from other people, incorporate it, and you need to be able to adapt. Despite what people might see on the outside of how an artist might be, despite what that perception might be, at the end of the day, these people are professionals, and they have to be. Otherwise, none of this would work.
What the fuck are you whining about?
And while that's going on, you come in again and say, what the fuck are you whining about? The second time you say it, while you're doing it over your scream, you hold that one to say, what the fuck
I got you. And
then
run
it
that.
ends the song.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you whining about? What the fuck are you whining about?
Randy's badass. He really is. You just saw him adapt in real time. Bass player had an idea for taking one word higher, and Randy knew exactly how to do it and just did it. That's a great vocalist right there.
We're here in Spin Studios in Queens.
It's just not a big room, not a lot of reverberation, and we wanted a tight drum sound, and this place was great for that and almost designed for that. With that room and with Machine's experience and Josh working as an engineer on the drums, we got it. We nailed it.
I believe that's Josh Wilbur, engineering, who has gone on to be one of the best metal mixer producers of all time. Almost positive that was Josh Wilbur. Also, want to point out the drum room. So they got kind of a medium to small drum room that was not totally dead. It had some reflective surfaces, but it wasn't like, this big room. Lots of times people see these huge rooms with super high ceilings and they automatically think that it's going to be better. But for this kind of music where there's a lot happening with the drums, a huge room like that can sometimes be a detriment. And so if you're tracking metal or fast metal in a really, really big reverberant room, it's oftentimes helpful to do something to cut the room out of the equation, like build baffles and put them around the drums, or work in a smaller room. Not a tiny room, not a tiny room, not a totally dead room, but a good medium-sized room that's like well dampened is best bet, because you need the clarity. You need the clarity for this kind of music. There's so much articulation. There's so many little details. You don't want that to get lost in the wash. I think they were doing hands and feet separate, because if you hear when Chris stops, the feet keep going. And this is actually a really, really good technique for this kind of music, because then you don't have the kicks all over all of the microphones, all in the room mics, all in the overheads. It makes it for a much easier mix, much easier to edit. And it's not just in metal. This isn't just done in metal. Like, for instance, I know that lots of recordings featuring Mr. Dave Grohl, one of the best rock and roll drummers of all time, have been done hands and feet separate. So it's a good technique. It's not always necessary. Some drummers actually play worse if you try to separate the two. Sometimes you want to have a kick pad for the feet, but it's a good thing to try depending on the scenario. You might get a lot more clarity and power out of the drum performance, because the drummer can then focus 100% of their energy on the hands and how they're hitting the shells and the cymbals, which will make it sound better. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, on this type of record, you're probably going to end up replacing the kicks anyways. So it's less important that the kick performance is as powerful as the hands performance, because it's going to be replaced with a sample that sounds great and is powerful.
Chris, first of all, is a workaholic. And if he wasn't doing this, he would be doing the same for someone else, which is, it's awesome that he's able to work this hard for himself. We as a band have benefited greatly from that, because Chris has been on and getting shit done from day one.
You always need that one person in every band. There has to be the person who's the workaholic. It's usually one or two people who basically do 90% of the work for the band, and without them, the band would fall apart. Now, they're not necessarily always like the main writer. They're not always necessarily the most popular person. They're not necessarily the best musician. But every single band that's successful has that one person or a duo who basically keep that engine running, and their entire life is that band. It has to be that way. Actually, it doesn't require every single member to be that way. There are some band members who all they need to do is play and show up and, do their parts. But there has to be somebody who lives, breathes, bleeds it, shits it, sleeps it, everything.
I'm playing the drums to a click track and to guide guitars that were recorded earlier in Richmond. So Willie's not actually playing with me, but if there was ever any question about the timing on certain things or the guitar riff, he was here for that. And that hasn't come up, which is a good sign. You know, we nailed things in rehearsal and in writing the songs pretty well. He's also been able to set up a workstation for him to sit and just practice the songs, and also, not that it's good to be away from his family or whatever, but he's kind of up here really focused on, you know, writing these things that fit the part, and he can do it a million times over and over with the computer. And
I'm working on a solo, you know, solos and stuff. What song? Pee Pee Doo Doo?
I think that's an M-box that they gave him to, you know, work on parts in the other room. That was kind of a rare thing. I know that nowadays everybody has something like this or nicer. It's actually rare for someone not to have one. But back in those days, there was usually only one member of a band who had anything like that. And often it was really 0 members of a band. So this was actually not a normal thing. And they probably had to show him how to use it and hook it up for him. But it's really interesting how things changed, because nowadays I have not met a musician in forever who doesn't at least have some like fundamental basic knowledge of recording. Like, I just haven't met any in forever.
Taking turns, tracking. Randy, me, tracking.
Any leading embellishments here?
It seems like they're tracking entire songs at once rather than doing all of the guitars, all of the bass, all of the vocals, which is actually a really smart way to do it. So they have different stations set up, like guitar station, bass station, vocal station. They're just kind of rotating. So they'll do all the rhythms for a song, do all the bass for a song, do all vocals for a song. And it also seems like they have different engineers for different jobs. So it looked like there was an engineer working with Willie on rhythm guitars. That's a very efficient way to do things. I call it the metal factory.
Absolutely. Give it to me.
Another word about the metal factory is, as a producer, to pull that off successfully, you have to really trust the engineers that are under you. Machine, being such a great communicator and such a great teacher, was obviously able to get the engineers that worked under him to understand exactly what he wanted, what he needed for this record, so he could trust that if they were tracking Willie doing rhythm guitars, that the rhythm guitars that he was going to get was exactly what was needed for the song. He did a good enough job on pre-pro, and he has trained those guys well enough to where he can sit there and work on vocals or lead guitars or whatever it is that Machine wants to be working on, and know that what the other engineers are doing is going to be great. Really good playing right there. You wouldn't really think of, you know, some clean part like that being stand out, but those are actually some of the hardest parts to play, because you're totally naked on those parts. There's no distortion to save you, and any little flub, any little change in what you're doing, a little squeak, it just makes it sound like shit. Actually, I had Freddie Atkinson, lead guitar player from Opeth, on the Riff Hard podcast, and we were talking about this. We were talking about how clean parts where you're playing by yourself are by far the hardest part of being in a metal band, because it's so easy to mess that up and there's nothing there to save you. So this is some really, really good playing, really solid playing by Mark Morton.
Campbell can pick up his bass and follow right along with, you know, Mark and myself, and you know, like that. It's solid.
Yeah, you can hear when John Campbell is playing that, even though he's just matching the riffs, it seems like, which is perfectly fine for this style, it's not just like a low guitar. It's adding that beef and it's adding that glue. And that's the mark of a really, really good metal bass player. They don't necessarily stand out, but if you were to mute them, it would sound empty. It would sound like it was like something was missing, basically.
Willie and the whole Adler contingency, his brother, Chris, they're the technical. They're the technical of the technical.
Well, once the drums are done, I guess to most drummers that would be the end, and then you just gotta wait and see what happens, you know. And to me, it's while those layers are being built on top of those drum tracks, that's still what I consider to be a very creative process in the record. I want to be there, and I think a lot of the band wants to be there.
That's different, because lots of times when bands are already into third album, fourth album, fifth album, once they're like veterans, they usually don't all want to be at the studio at the same time. Like typically the drummer will show up, do their drums, and then peace out while everything else happens. Chris Adler is definitely a rare breed because he just wants to be in on everything, which, like the dudes said, really, really helped the band out a lot. But that's just not normal. It's not normal for veteran bands to all want to be there the whole time. Abnormal behavior right there. But it works. Works for them.
I'm going to incorporate all this fucked up shit that I'm going through into it.
Begging on your
What a sick vocalist. Randy is great. One thing I want to point out right here is that you don't have to do vocals in a vocal booth. If you have a proper dynamic microphone, it's not going to work with a condenser, but a proper dynamic microphone for tracking, you can track with the monitors on and blaring, and the bleed's not going to get in the way. Lots of metal vocalists prefer to do that in the room with the producer because they get a better performance out of it. A lot of vocalists don't like vocal booths. They just feel weird about it. It's better to have a little bit of bleed and a great performance than to have a pristine performance where it's just not as good. Pristine sounding, but doesn't feel as great because the vocalist is uncomfortable. So whatever is going to make the vocalist be as comfortable as possible, that's the best bet. You can take a hit on the recording quality if the performance is going to be that much better. You just got to judge the pros versus the cons in every situation.
I'm a crazy fucker, dude. You can try and like contain me, but I'll break out eventually, you know?
Most great vocalists are crazy fuckers. It is what it is.
Very important for the voice.
Smoking in the studio, holy shit. Haven't seen that in a long time.
We'd be doing stuff, and I'd be saying to myself, he's oblivious to what we're doing. He doesn't even realize how good it is sometimes.
Randy has learned to pitch his screams, which I think makes him way better of a vocalist.
Wasted! Soulless!
Machine is just getting into it. At the beginning of the video, when I said that he is a very inspiring dude, watching him track vocals and the way that he's coaching Randy through his insecurities and getting the best performances possible out of him and like helping create the energy that he wants out of Randy and genuinely enjoying doing it. That's a great producer right there.
End of Walk With Me in Hell. I want you to sing it out of breath, as though you're on stage, end of the show, desperate, the hardest show, the ending track. I want you to literally get the fuck up and run around the block as fast as you can 2 times. Come in, I will hand you the mic, and you'll cut the end like that. I don't think you can fucking do it.
That's a legendary moment right there. Machine telling him to run around the block and get out of breath, like actually get out of breath. And it's because sometimes you just can't simulate a certain effect or a certain vibe you want out of a vocalist. Sometimes you have to piss them off. Like I've heard stories about Steven Tyler getting punched in the stomach or punched when he was trying to hit super high notes in the studio. I don't know if it's true or not, but the idea of treating a vocalist kind of like a method actor is a very, very valid way to do it with certain types of vocalists. Is you actually get them there as authentically as possible, and then it comes through in the performance. And I think another great example of that is if you see some of those old videos of Ross Robinson with Jonathan Davies of Korn, very, very real stuff on there.
And you better fucking run, dude.
Already thrown up. I get headaches every fucking day from this retarded ass. Fuck this shit.
It's already pissing Randy off. Like he is not into the idea, so he's going to be pissed off and out of breath. And I think that the pissed off element of it is part of what Machine is going for. He's trying to get him to where he just sounds desperate and exhausted and pissed the fuck off. That's probably authentically how he's going to feel.
Recording vocalists, it's very athletic. So you've got to go run around the block a couple of times and come right in and cut this vocal for it to sound real. That's how we do it. That's how we do. It's got to be real.
So I guess Machine just backed up everything I said, that It's got to be real.
He's a sadist, you know, but he's got great ideas. If you're a softie and not open to anything, I wouldn't recommend working with him.
Stick it in your fucking face! Stick it in your face! Now! Keep it there!
Take hold of my hand! For you are no longer alone! Walk with me in hell!
Keep it in your face! Keep it in your face!
Walk with me in hell!
You okay? Okay, good.
He goes, gonna go puke in the corner.
I love you, Randy.
It's the best record we've ever done. It's the complete picture of who we are as a band.
It's an evolution in our sound, and it's a groundbreaking metal record.
I know every band says this, like, it's our best record, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're all used to hearing, oh, it's our heaviest record, it's our best record. But honestly, if a band doesn't feel like that about their new record, that's not good. They should feel that way. You should feel like the thing you just did is your best work. I mean, what's the other option? That you feel like you didn't get better? That's not good. You should feel like you got better, and you should be proud of the work you just did.
And now it's time to take that push and that motivation and that kick-ass attitude on the road.
So there you have it. My first time ever watching The Making of Sacrament, and the big question was, is it still relevant or just a nostalgia trip? What struck me immediately is how much of this workflow is still how modern metal records are made. This isn't a snapshot of some bygone era. This is very much how metal records are produced today. The tools might be more powerful, the technology more advanced, but the core techniques, the meticulous attention to detail, and the relentless pursuit of the best performance, that's timeless. Seeing Machine in his prime, pushing the band, extracting every ounce of aggression and precision, that's inspiring and a masterclass in getting the most out of a band. I can absolutely see how this documentary would have inspired countless musicians and producers. This isn't just a nostalgia trip. It's a testament to enduring production principles. And that's what we focus on at URM. If you want to see how the best in the business get it done today, with modern tools and real-world budgets, you need to check out Nail the Mix. It's the closest you can get to being in the room without having to deal with a camera crew. The link is in the description. So what did you think? What's your biggest takeaway from this? Let me know in the comments. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because we put out a new video every week. See you next time.